Okay, good day everyone. This is our Professor Jocelyn Aguila Aguina. Once again, I'm going to discuss the continuation of obligation and contract. So we are on part 3, still on the nature and effect of obligations. So let's start. Under Article 1171, the responsibility arising from fraud is demandable in all obligation. Any waiver of an action for future fraud is void. Okay. The responsibility arising from fraud. This article, eh, this article refer to the um, incidental fraud which is employed in the fulfillment of an obligation. This is deemed serious and evil, so the court is not given power to mitigate or reduce damages to be awarded. Okay. The cause of action or the waiver of action for future fraud is void. For past fraud, valid. What is the reason behind? For future fraud, yung waiver of action for future fraud, according to the time of commission, fraud may be past or future, but a waiver of an action for future fraud is void, no effect at all, as if there is no waiver for being against the law and public policy. It is discussed in also discussed in Article 1409. A contrary rule would encourage the perpetration of fraud because the obligor knows that even if he should commit fraud, he would not be liable for it, thus making the obligation illusory. Okay? The waiver naman of action for past fraud is now valid. Valid na siya. What the law prohibit is the waiver anterior to the fraud and to the knowledge thereof by the aggrieved party. The past fraud can be subject to for a valid waiver because the waiver can be considered as an act of generosity and magnanimity of the part on the part of the party who is the victim of fraud. Here, what is renounced is the effect of the fraud, that is, the right to indemnity of the party entitled thereto. The waiver must be expressed in clear language which leaves no doubt as to the intention of the obligee to give up his right against the obligor. Let's make an illustration or an example of this waiver. For example, si S promised to deliver 120 kaban of rice to a particular with a particular brand and quality to be, okay, at the rate of 10 kabans a month. S cannot make an agreement with B, thereby B will not file a complaint to the court against S should S commit fraud in the performance of its obligation. This waiver is an action in the performance of his obligation. This waiver is an action for future fraud. Therefore, it is void. because B can still bring the an action against S for damages arising from fraud. But once the fraud is committed, and then B with full knowledge of the said fraud can he can waive the right to indemnify as an act of forgiveness kapag pinatawad niya na. For example, nagawa na yung panloko, yung fraud. And then B, nakipag-compromise pa din siya. So, alam niya na merong ganon. So, yung right niya to be for the indemnity, mawiwave na kasi patatawarin niya ni. 'Di ba? So, yung pag nagawa na in the past yung panloloko, tapos pinatawad niya, yun ang loko will be parang absuelto na siya sa ginawa niya. Pero yung gagawa ka ng alam mong mali, pero kinompromise mo pa na, oh, hindi ka pwede magreklamo ha, bawal yun. So, it is void. Pag gagawin mo pa lang. Pero pag nagawa na and then pinatawad ka ng nagawan mo ng fraud, therefore, the obligation will be extinguished or mawawala. Okay. Under Article 1172, the responsibility arising from negligence in the performance of every kind of obligation is also demandable, but such liability may be regulated by the court according to the circumstances. Ano ba itong mga liability arising from negligence? From negligence which is demandable. Okay. Let's have this. Okay, discretion of the control to fix measures of damage. So the court are given a wide discretion in fixing the measure of damage. Pangalawa, the damages were brought are mutual negligent. The fault of one cancels the neutralize the negligence of the other. No one shall enrich himself at the, at the expense of another. Okay. So the liability arising from that's number 1 and 2. Ang number 3 ay para lang ba? Okay. Let me give a particular example with this. In the performance of every kind of obligation, the debtor is also liable for damages resulting from negligence. Tama? Okay. The court, however, are given wide discretion to fix the said measure of damages. The reason is because the negligence is a question which must necessarily depend upon the circumstances of each particular case. Moreover, negligence is not as serious as fraud because in the case of fraud or in the case of negligence, there is no deliberate intent. Walang intensyon to cause injury or damage. According to the circumstances, the court may increase or decrease the damages recoverable where both parties to a contract are negligent in the performance of their respective obligations. The fault of one may cancel the other. Ito yung sinasabi ko, binasa ko kanina. Okay. Yung nandyan sa screen nyo. What are the different kinds of negligence according to the source of obligation? So we have 3. The culpa contractual negligence or culpa contractual. Ano ba to? It is a negligence in contract resulting in their breach under 1172. It refers to culpa contractual. This kind of negligence is not source of obligation. under Article 1157. It, mer- it merely makes the debtor liable for damages in view of his negligence in the fulfillment of the pre-existing obligation under 1170 and 1172. Halimbawa, example nito guys, if S entered into a contract of sale with B to deliver a specific horse on a certain day, and the horse died through the negligence of S before the delivery. Siyempre, si S is liable for damages kasi negligence niya yun damages to B for having failed to fulfill the pre-existing obligation. So the contract may be either expressed or implied because of his negligence. Ito yung culpa contractual. Okay. Number two. Okay. Civil negligence or culpa aquiliana, or negligence which by itself is the source of obligation between the parties not so related before by any pre-existing contract. It is also called tort or quasi-delict. It will be also discussed in Article 2176. Okay. Example, assume now yung horse natin kanina that the horse belong to you and is in the possession of B. Okay. The negligence of S which result in the death of the horse in culpa aquiliana. In this case, there is no pre-existing contractual relation between S and B. The negligence itself is the source of liability. Okay? Pangatlo, ay, ay, nagbabago ba? Sorry. Number three, criminal negligence. Criminal negligence or culpa criminal. So, negligence resulting in the commission of crime under Article 3 and 365 of the Revised Penal Code. The same negligent act causing damage may produce civil liability arising from crime under Article 100. Di ba na-discuss ko na to sa inyo na for every criminal action, there will be a civil action under Revised Penal Code, Article 100. Or create an action for quasi-delict under Article 2176 ng New Civil Code. So, in negligent cases, the aggrieved party may choose between criminal action under 100, Article 100 of the RPC, or civil action or damage under Article 2176 of the New Civil Code. What is prohibited under 2177 of the Civil Code is to recover twice of the same negligence. Hindi pwedeng double jeopardy. Example, bigyan natin ng example to. A crime can be committed by negligence if B wants a crime can be okay. He can bring the action for culpa criminal or damage to property through simple or reckless imprudence. Here, the crime is the source of obligation of S to pay for the damages. But B cannot recover damages twice for the same act or omission of S. In other words, responsibility for quasi-delict is not demandable together with the civil liability arising from criminal offense. Okay. What will be now the effect of negligence on the part of the injured party. Ano ngayon yung magiging effect? If suppose the creditor is also guilty of negligence, can he recover damages? Answer, class. Again, suppose the creditor is also guilty of negligence. Can he recover damages? Also, you have to comment it down below. So, kaya nga, di ba kanina, inano natin, dalawang pwedeng pagpilian. Article 100, the RPC, or 2177 ng, 2176 ng New Civil Code. But here, in Article 2179 of the New Civil Code, it provides that when the plaintiff owns negligence, plaintiff's own negligence was the immediate and proximate cause of his injury, he cannot recover damages. But if the negligence was only contributory, the immediate or proximate cause of the injury being the defendant, lack of due care, the plaintiff may recover damages, but the court shall mitigate the damages to be awarded under Article 2214 and 2215. Pag ang negligence galing doon sa nagrereklamo at ang negligence ay yun ang proximate or immediate or proximate cause ng injury, hindi siya pwedeng mag-claim ng damages. Pero, kung ang negligence ay contributory lang, ibig sabihin, may ano lang siya, may sala din siya kung bakit nangyari yon. Ang defendant or yung respondent ay na siya yung just immediate and proximate cause ng injury, mababawasan. Pwede kang mag-recover, pero ang court ay mitigate ang damages na i-award, pabababain niya. Okay. Pwedeng maging defense ang contributory negligence of the injured party kapag may contributory negligence. So, hindi lahat yan ay masasagot ng defendant. Let me illustrate or give an example. Okay. Okay, dito muna tayo. Okay. S is a passenger in a carefully driven bus. Without any warning, he jumped off the bus as a result of which he suffered injury. Sa tingin nyo ba, magiging liable si bus? Magiging liable si owner nung bus? Comment it down below. Pangalawa yun So the bus company is not liable for the damage because P's injury of his own negligence. Kapabayaan niya, tumalon siya, dinadrive naman ng maayos, diba? Now, baguhin natin. Suppose P was standing in a running board of the bus and was repeatedly told by the conductor to go inside, but he did not pay any attention. Suddenly, the bus swerved to the left to avoid collision with another vehicle. Umiwas siya kasi babangga siya. As a result of which, P was thrown off the bus na natapon siya at the time of yung nag-curve. And the driver was intoxicated and was driving recklessly at a very high risk of speed. Ano kayo mangyayari? Liable ba si bus? Yes or no? In this case, P did not observe diligence of a good father of the family to avoid injury to himself, but his contributory negligence does not bar recovery for damages to his death or injury since the proximate cause or the direct cause thereof is the negligence of the common carrier. Kasalanan din ng bus kasi mabilis nga yung patakbo niya. The amount of damages shall be equitably reduced, mababawasan siya. It was discussed in Article 1762. Mababawasan kasi yung yung injury ni P as the passenger of the bus, may contributory siya. Kumbaga may binigyan na siya ng warning ng konduktor na pumasok siya, 'di ba? Para hindi para maiwasan yung aksidente, nag-swerve si bus. Oh, pero reckless pa din siya, so she will be liable. Oh, isa pa example. Suppose in the second example, the bus rounded a curve, causing P to lose his balance and fall off the platform, sustaining injury. The bus at this time of the accident was traveling in a moderate speed and there was no infraction of law and regulations, and P was exposed to no greater danger than what that inherent in the particular mode of travel. Here, P cannot recover. Bakit? He should have been, he had been was against the contingency as that of losing his balance for a greater or lesser extent with the bus rounding the curve. So ito, diniscuss to in one of the cases in the Supreme Court. In other words, to be entitled for damages, it is not required that the negligence of the defendant should be sole cause of the damage. Kumbaga, ang defendant, eh, pwede kang ma-waive yung 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 damages na i-recover sa'yo kung talagang greater ang contribution or it is the negligence of the plaintiff na mangyayari sa kanya yun, 'di ba? So presume the contractual negligence in the action of quasi-delict or torch. Anyway, madidiscuss to for sa sa torch, yung recovery of damages, torch and damages. Maganda rin subject yan. So, presumption of contractual negligence in an action of quasi-delict or torch, it should be clearly established. When the action is based on the contract of carriage, the obligor or the carrier fails to transfer passenger to his destination, the fault or negligence is presumed. In culpa contractual, the moment the passenger dies or is injured, the common carrier is presumed to have a fault to have acted negligently, and the disputable presumption may only be overcome by evidence that had experienced extraordinary diligence. Kapag nakita naman talaga na you practice the diligent of good father, take care of your passenger of good father, hindi mawi-waive yung liability or at the death of or injury was due to fortuitous event. Okay. The driver is not solidarily liable with the carrier. So the carrier being the exclusively responsible for the passenger without the right of the carrier to recover from his driver the latter's negligence. Okay. So Article 1173. 1173, the fault or negligence of the obligor consists in the omission of the diligence which is required by the nature of obligation and correspond with the circumstances of the person at and the time place. When negligence shows bad faith, the provision of Article 1171 and 2201, Paragraph 2 shall apply. If the law or contract does not state the diligence which is to be observed in the performance, that which is expected of a good father of a family shall be required. Okay. What do you mean by fault or negligence? Okay. It is stated here in this article. What do you mean by fault or negligent? So, fault or negligence is defined by this provision. According to the Supreme Court, negligence is the failure to observe for the protection of the interests of another person. That degree of care, precaution, and vigilance which the circumstances justly demand, whereby such other person suffer injury. Ito yung US versus Bacarias. Maganda rin tong case na to. Try to read that. So what are the tests for determining whether a person is negligent? Yan. Paano nyo malalamang may negligence siya? Yan. Okay. Number negligent siya. The reasonable care A reasonable care and caution expected of an extraordinary prudent person. The law imposes the duty on the actor to refrain from the course or to take precaution against its mischievous result, and the failure to do so constitute negligence. Foreseeability is the fundamental test of negligence. So number two, no hard or fast rule for measuring degree of care. It is dependent upon the circumstances in which a person finds himself in the situation. Okay. What are the factors to be considered? What are the factors to be considered? Diba? Negligence is a question of facts. It is, and that is its extents of being dependent upon a particular circumstances. Pag sinabi nyong nature of obligation, for example of nature of obligation, parang obligasyon mo na talaga na alam mo na may mangyayaring ganun, ba't mo pa gagawin? For example, pag nature of obligation, kung, di ba nag-smoke kayo, alam nyo ng smoker, alam nyo na ang dala nyo ay isang tangke ng gasolina na may nakalagay na napakalaking inflammable. You know that pwede siyang sumabog. But still, you're smoking while carrying the material. So, yung nature of obligation, di ba? Alam mo na may ganong bagay, naninigarilyo ka pa. Okay. The circumstances of a person. What do you mean by circumstances by a person? Halimbawa, ang guard. Kaya ka nga guard para mag-watch. Kung natutulog ka, 'di ba? A guard na, for example, at the prime of his life, healthy naman, pero sleeping while on duty. O negligent yun. 'Di ba? Next is the circumstance of time. You are driving na wala kang headlight, gabi ka nagda-drive. 'Di ba? Gabi, madilim, sa time, gabi. Tapos, alam mo wala kang headlight, bakit ka magdadrive na walang headlight? Parang, nag-drive ka na sira ang preno. 'Di ba? Sira ang preno ng kotse mo. Yun. Tapos gabi pa. O circumstances of the place. Driving 100 km/h on a superhighway, pwede, 'di ba? Pero kung nasa EDSA ka naman, 'di ba? Tapos 100 km/h, tama ba na mag-drive ka ng ganun, 'di ba? Sa expressway pwede. Wala dong motor, sa EDSA madami. Oh. Proof number two is the proof of a proof presumption of negligence. Negligence is never presumed but must be proven by the party who are alleging it. Except, ang exemption niya sa culpa contractual. Kasi may kontra kayo. 'Di ba? So, how do you measure liability? Sa civil code, ang measure of liability for damages. It is discussed separately in the civil code. Yung title on the damages. Okay, ano ba yung damages? Damages signifies the money compensation awarded to a party for loss or injury resulting from breach of contract or obligation by the other. As a rule, the purpose of awarding damages is to place the innocent party in the same position he would have occupied if the contract or obligation have been performed according to its term. Okay, ano ba sinasabi ng Article 20 22 Article 2201, di ba? In contract or quasi-contract, the damage for which the obligor who acted in good faith is liable shall be those that are the natural or probable consequences of the obligation, and which the party have been foreseen or could have reasonably foreseen at the time of the obligation was constituted. In case of fraud, bad faith, malice, the obligor shall be responsible for all the damages which may be reasonably contributed to the non-performance of the obligation. Okay. Example, si S agree to sell and deliver to be a certain date on a certain date 100 kilo of sugar at a certain quality for 30,000. Then B agree to sell the sugar to be received by S to C for 35,000. Okay. This contract with C was made known to S. Okay. On the date designated, S did not deliver the sugar so that C bought sugar again from the other. Sa iba na lang siya bumili. So yung breach of obligation by S resulting to the loss of 5,000 pesos na dapat tinubo niya. So B that is suffered for kunwari si B suffered for heart attack for which he was hospitalized for 5 days. In this case, if S acted in good faith, the damages which B ought to receive should be should the amount of 5,000 the profit from B failed to realize. But if S acted in bad faith, he is also liable to pay for the hospitalization and expenses incurred by B, which clearly originated from the breach, although they might not have been reasonably contemplated by the party at the time they entered into a contract. Okay. Under 1173, ito yung kinds of negligence are required. The that agreed upon by the party orally or in written in the absence of stipulation that required by the law in a particular case, like the extraordinary diligence requires in a common carrier, and if both of the contract and law are silent, then the diligence expected of a good father of a family. It is discussed in paragraph 2 of Article 1163. Okay. So itong damages na to, ito pala. Okay. Ito yung bad faith. Number 2. Number 3, moral damages. Ito yan. And the measure of liability for damages. So, ito yan. Na-discuss ko. Sorry, hindi ko na ship yung tawag dyan, slide. I forgot. And then, ito yung kinds of diligence required so that yung party agreed upon, in written or oral, required by the law. The diligence is expected of a good father. Okay. So under Article 1174, 1174 naman, it is except in cases expressly specified by law or when it is otherwise declared by stipulation, or when the nature of obligation requires the assumption of risk, no person shall be responsible for those events which could not be foreseen or which, though foreseen, were inevitable. Okay. Ito yung fortuitous event. What do you mean now by fortuitous event? Okay. A fortuitous event is any event which cannot be foreseen or which, though foreseen, is hindi siya ma-avoid. Stated otherwise, it is an event which is either impossible to foresee or impossible to avoid. The essence of fortuitous event consists of being a happening independent of the will of the debtor, and which happening makes the normal fulfillment of obligation impossible, hindi na matupad. Okay. Fortuitous event versus force majeure. What is fortuitous event and force majeure? So fortuitous event is classified either act of man or act of God. Act of man, war, fire, robbery, murder, diba? Insurrection, etc. Act of God, earthquake, flood, rain, diba? Tinamaan ng kidlat, pumutok na volcan, which is also called a force majeure. Term lang siya, no? These are the fortuitous event. What are the kinds of fortuitous event? Okay. In speaking of contract of lease, our civil code distinguish between two kinds of fortuitous event. Number one is ordinary fortuitous event, or those event which are common and which the contracting parties could reasonably foresee. Pag extraordinary fortuitous event, or those event which are uncommon and which the contracting parties could not have reasonably foreseen, like earthquake, fire, war, 'di ba? Hindi siya nakikita. It is also discussed in 1680, paragraph 2. So what are the requisites for fortuitous event? The event must be independent to human will or at the least of the debtor's will. The event could not be foreseen or if foreseen, hindi siya ma-avoid. The event must be such a character that as to reader it is impossible for the debtor to comply with his obligation in a normal manner, and the debtor must be free from any particular participation in or in the aggravation of the injury of the creditor, that is where there is no concurrent negligence on his part. So in the absence of any of the mentioned requisite, it will prevent the obligor from being exempt from liability. Mere pecuniary inability or poverty is not the excuse of non-fulfillment of an obligation. Neither is mere difficulty to foresee the happening of an event. It is different from the impossibility to foresee the same. As stated earlier, the event must be unforeseeable, or even if it could be foreseen, it must be impossible to avoid. So, the concurrent or previous negligence of the obligor, there must be no concurrent previous negligence or imprudence on the part of the obligor by which the loss or injury may have been occasioned. There should have been no human participation amounting to the negligent act. So what are the rule as to the liability in cases of fortuitous event, 'di ba? As a general rule, when yung number one is expressly specified by the law. Ito yung mga articles na yan para maging perfectus. Okay? Pag expressly specified by law, for example, letter A. Okay. Example, the debtor is guilty of fraud, negligence, or delay on contravention of the tenure of the obligation under Article 11, 1170, and 1165, paragraph T. Example nito, yung when expressly specified by law. Example, S is obliged to deliver a specific horse to B on August 10. S did not deliver the horse on the said date. If on August 11 the horse died because it was hit by lightning, S is not liable if no demand was made by B. His obligation is extinguished. Okay. 'Di ba? Na-discuss natin sa previous na may ordinary delay at saka legal delay. Ngayon, kailangan i-deliver ni S yung horse kay B ng August 10. Pero hindi nga dineliver. Pero walang demand si B. August 11, tinamaan ng magaling, tinamaan ng kidlat ang kabayo. Diba? Liable ba si S? No, kasi wala namang demand si B. So, ang obligation ngayon ni S will be extinguished if the horse died after the demand of B. S is liable for damages because he is guilty of the legal delay. In this case, the obligation of S to deliver the horse is also distinguished, but it is converted into monetary obligation to pay the damages. Okay. If the horse would have died in any event, even no demand that have been made by B, S would still be liable. A debtor in default becomes liable even for loss due to fortuitous event. However, the court may reduce the amount of damages. Ayan. Next, when when the debtor promise when the debtor has promised to deliver the same specific thing, ay hindi pa tayo dyan, of two or more person who do not have the same interest. O dito ang example, if A sold and promised to deliver the same car to B and C separately, S is liable even for fortuitous event. The reason is because it would be impossible to S to comply with the obligation if both B and C, even without any fortuitous event, take place. Okay. Ito pa, the obligation to deliver a specific thing arising from 12, wait lang. Okay, let's go back. Okay. Example uh, S stole the Carabao of B. S has the obligation arising from crime to return the Carabao. Even if the Carabao dies or is lost through fortuitous event, S is still liable for damages unless B is in mora acipendi. A person is responsible for the result of whatever cause which flow from his criminal act. Ninakaw niya eh. Tapos sabi mo fortuitous event. Hindi pwede yun. A thing to be delivered is generic. The loss or destruction of a generic thing like rice, corn, sugar, etc. does not produce the extinction of the obligation because the debtor can still comply with the obligation by delivering another kind according to which the principal or genus is required. Okay. Pag ang i-deliver niya ay generic at hindi specific, kahit fortuitous event yan, liable pa rin si debtor. Okay? Yung si debtor, yung magdi-deliver. When declare in default, ayan na, when declare by stipulation, the basis for this exemption rests upon the freedom of contract. Such stipulation is usually unintended to better protect the interests of the creditor and procure greater diligence of a good on the part of the debtor in the fulfillment of his obligation. But the intention to make the debtor liable even in case of the fortuitous event should be clearly expressed. And number three, when the nature of obligation requires the assumption of risk. Here, the risk or of loss or damages is an essential element in the obligation. So example, B incurred his house, insured his house uh, against fire for 100,000 with C, an insurance company CC. Later, the house was destroyed by accidental fire. Although the cause of loss of is a fortuitous event, B may recover the amount of the policy. In the contract of insurance, the insurer C is uh, in consideration of the premium paid by the insured. B undertakes the to indemnify B from the loss of the thing insured by reason of peril insured against, even if the cause of the loss is fortuitous event. So, effect of risk. What will be the effect of risk? Not not one impossible to foresee. Risk quite evident. The nature of the obligation is such that the party could rightfully be them to have assumed it. Mere difficult to foresee risk, it is different from impossibility to foresee or anticipate the same. For example, the 1997 financial crisis is not among the fortuitous events contemplated in Article 1174. The fluctuations in currency is not an instant of caso future. Okay. And then, the impossibility of performance must be from accordance with the fortuitous event. Okay. The impossibility of fulfilling the obligation must be the direct consequence of the event. If notwithstanding the occurrence of the obligation can be fulfilled, it will subsist even if only in part. Okay. What is the effect of the obligor negligence upon his liability? One is negligence contributed for the loss or damage. When the negligence of a person concurs with the fortuitous event in producing producing a loss, he is not exempt from liability by showing that the immediate cause of the damage was the fortuitous event. Number two, negligence not contributory to loss or damage. The consequences uh, are derivation of the fortuitous event. It cannot be said that responsibility arising therefore. Okay. Until this part, we will stop on this part, and I'm going to continue with the part 4 of this video for us to finish Title 1, Chapter 2 of Obligation and Contract. So if you haven't subscribed yet, or thank you for listening. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you will be notified every time I'm going to upload a video, and then you can comment your answers points of to earn points sa ating recitation and quizzes. So, be ready for the quiz long quiz. Tatapusin natin tong Title 1, Chapter 2 of the Obligation and Contract. Okay, that's all for today, folks. Have a nice day ahead of you. God bless.